This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to Teacher Talk Radio. Sorry we're a little bit late, a few technical issues. We're going to be talking about PE and fitness today, so come and join in the conversation.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome on this Monday night in December. Hopefully most of you have finished school now and are ready for the Christmas countdown. And those of you that are still going, holding in strong. This show is brought to you
in partnership with John Catt Education.
Apologies. Those of you still going strong on the last few days, I hope they go quick and smoothly for you. Tonight we're going to be chatting about PE and the importance of having experts in their field in terms of what that can add to our PE lessons, and educating our students to make sure that they are having the right form and the right diet, and how we can make sure that they are improving throughout. So I've got Josh coming and joining me tonight. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, Hannah. Thanks for the invite. How are you keeping at this moment in time?
I'm good. Glad that the holidays have started. I'm missing my PE at the moment with my broken foot, so I'm kind of hoping that this week I'll get the all clear to get back to a bit of exercise. It's definitely missing it at the moment. How about yourself?
Yeah. One of the lucky ones that managed to get off term last Friday, so I've been enjoying some downtime and getting ready for the Christmas festivities before sort of kicking back on into the new year. But enjoying that downtime especially.
So tell us a bit more about your role, because you're not a teacher per se, you're a sports specialist.
Yeah, so I'm a strength and conditioning coach by trade. Did you want to know school specifics or just sort of in general?
No, that's fine.
So I work mainly at a private school, a large day school to be more sort of specific on that sense. And my main role is basically to look after kind of the physical health and a little bit of the mental health that comes with that within sort of the gym and athletic development kind of curriculum. In terms of how that role looks, it's mainly spread out through sort of three avenues. We have our like built-in PE integration. We have like a games perspective. And then we have like an extracurricular and like a gifted and talented kind of avenue as well. So with that, we managed to cover over 1,600 pupils. And we have a roughly sort of staff delivery body of 75 members of staff, of which about, I think, 25 of those are kind of dedicated PE teachers or coaches. And then the rest come from non-sporting, like academic staff members who also help out with games and sport.
So do you think this benefits the students having that expertise, that different knowledge within the subject?
Yeah, I think sport and health is changing. I think if we look at how gyms are changing, if we look at how the fitness industry is kind of changing, we need to kind of allow the students, we need to sort of prepare the students better for when they leave school. I don't think the traditional sport model works as well as it used to. Like, would you be open to talking about like your own sporting adventure at school? Like, how did you find sort of conventional sport when you was at school?
See, I wasn't the conventional sporting one, so I was on the swim team. So that was we all got to pick different sports, and it was up to you kind of where you went to. So in winter, obviously they did kind of hockey, and then netball, and then it was kind of rounders in the summer. But I was on the swim team, and that was all year round. My coach was quite an interesting fellow. So he was an army major, and he was very, very hard training sessions. They were quite thorough. But it was quite funny because everyone used to always want to join the swim team because they thought it was the easy option, and that we quite often played water polo or water volleyball and things like that. Or if it was really sunny, we'd take the mats outside and go and sunbathe. So people thought we were like the easy choice when it came to PE. But then people would join and he would do the hardest training session possible and have people like carrying weights around on their arms and sprinting. And he would literally not let people out until they threw up. And generally people would throw up. And then they would never come back. And then it was our nice little kind of group of dedicated core people, and he was a lot more relaxed. So he was very much a major in the army when new people came, and he put them through their paces. But then it was quite a nice group once we were there. But it was, we did it multiple times a week. It was very hard training. I myself then trained outside of school. So I did a Sunday night and then Saturday galas outside of school. So for me, it was within my wheelhouse, but then I didn't experience any other sport within my school. So I lack coordination, hence the broken foot currently from attempting rock climbing. So I clearly lacked the part of my PE career where I was meant to gain that kind of coordination. But in that respect, it was definitely the area that I enjoyed. And later on, I kind of went on to be like team captain and things. And I did swim nationally and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed it. But it was very much, we were a very small little almost community, rather than people that didn't really know what they were doing. We were very much kind of drilled and kind of knew what to do technique wise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you would be typically what we call an outlier. Like you're someone that found a sport and a niche, and because of that, you very much had that drive to enjoy that sport. Like for the most part, swimming, especially if we think about like early maturers in sport and sports that require lots of like foundational hours to be good at, swimming is definitely one of those. If we think about like your main sports, like especially in kind of like the school that I'm at, like we have multiple teams from an A team down to like an F team. And for me, my kind of ethos and what I think I should be doing as a strength and conditioning coach within a school has changed quite a lot. So when I first started this journey through undergrad and postgrad, my goal was, I want to go work in the US and be at a big college and look after all these high performing athletes. But actually, as like I've been in schools, I've realised that I can have a lot more impact on those kids that don't really enjoy mainstream sport, the ones that are not going to go on to be healthy and are not going to go on to play sport all their life. Like one of the main things that I'm trying to do is to actually target the kids that are further down the teams, who are in the C, D, E teams, and who don't see themselves playing sport, because ultimately their avenue probably in terms of health and lifestyle is going to be one around the gym, around exercising, around non-sport avenues. So a big push for me is very much, can we give these kids the new physical tools they need when they leave school? Not to be the polished piece, because I don't think anyone who leaves school is polished, but enough that when they step into a gym, they have the skills and the confidence to be able to set up their own session and not be charged extortionate amounts of money from PTs and be able to look after themselves. And because that's ultimately what we're trying to do, isn't it? We're trying to create these well-rounded individuals who are academically very bright and can make really good decisions, but also physically can look after themselves as well.
I think that was quite an interesting point. I'm going to go backwards a little bit on the fact that you said about America, because I actually considered at one point getting a scholarship and going and competing out there, because in terms of how we do education, specifically like if you go as far as university compared to us, they have like massive collegiate systems where they kind of have a lot of into competing, and they kind of almost create a higher level of competitiveness. Do you think we lack that a bit in this country in terms of getting people kind of competition ready, or do you think that puts too much pressure on like too early?
It's a hard one. The collegiate system in the States is very commercialized. So ultimately, the avenues are better for a lot more sports. So like obviously when you think of America, you think of basketball, American football, even now football to an extent is becoming bigger, baseball. Although they're the main big sports, because of how big the commercial system is within America, you have like softball, you have volleyball. So I think that attracts a bigger demographic of students to think, actually, I quite enjoy this sport. I'd like to pursue it at a higher level. I think because the university system in the UK isn't commercialized, yes, you can still play a very high level, but I don't think is as attractive as such. I think also in terms of how we structure sport, especially in this country, we're very hot on this kind of, well, especially in sort of private schools, this 3-sport term where we have hockey, netball, rugby is the big ones, and then kind of football is secondary. But because of how strong football is as a foundation outside of schools, football very much can be left a little bit more kind of amateuristic within schools because of how academies are formed. The other thing really coming back to it is, it's not so much making sure kids enjoy sport now, it's making sure they've got a good enough physical base that when they leave, if they say want to start swimming or want to start volleyball or basketball or anything at uni, they've got the good physical skills to be able to go and do that. You know, you can't play basketball without being able to jump. You can't be a good swimmer if you haven't got a good cardiovascular base. So if we can make those doors a bit easier to open, then ultimately we're going to keep people in sport for longer. The more healthy they are, the less strain it's going to have on our NHS system as well. So I know I've got off a bit of a caveat in terms of your original question, but unless kind of the money, unless there's a big drive on commercialism within university sport in this country, I can't ever see us kind of having that outreach as much as the States do.
Do you think we don't put enough emphasis on sport in school and kind of building up those skills? Because especially like kids have the option when they get to A-level to drop it. So post 16, they essentially don't have to be exercising at all. And I don't know whether we necessarily kind of giving them the skills to find, or giving them that opportunity, isn't it, to find that area of fitness that they really enjoy and they connect with. Because I think fitness is one of those that if you love it, you'll commit to it and you'll enjoy it. Like, it shouldn't be a painful experience. You shouldn't be like, oh God, I hated that, which a lot of kids kind of will have that relationship with sport at school. Do we need to have like move away from that idea of a term of hockey, a term of this, and kind of give them more of a range to be able to find something that they're passionate about? Or is that just not feasible within the kind of school system?
Yeah, I think you've kind of nailed it on the head there. There's definitely a cultural kind of trend that we do these sports. So I think from a cultural point of view, it'd be very hard to break that. If you think about how school sport works as a system, you know, you're very much used to emailing a certain member of staff to organise a certain fixture. And the system isn't perfect by any means. There's a lot of crossover, especially in smaller schools where pupils are almost shared across big mainstream sports. So there's definitely a cultural issue there in terms of can we actually create a different system which loads of sports are going to play into? And I guess the only way we could begin to improve on that culture is to be able to reach out to more schools and begin offering more sports. But ultimately that's underpinned by the financial status of the school. Can they afford to actually bring in these new sports, bring in these kind of more specialist coaches or the equipment that comes with those sports? Because I think if you think about like rugby and hockey, especially like rugby and football, you don't really need a lot. You need shin pads, a gum shield, and a ball. So I think in terms of opening doors and thinking about participation for all, they're large scale. You get lots of people involved. So ultimately, and that's another thing. This is why I think the jobs of PE teachers is really hard, because you're not only trying to teach them skills, you're also trying to make sure they get some form of like workout, so they're actually benefiting from physical exercise. You're also then trying to work within the means of your remit in terms of financial, like what equipment you have at your disposal. Like obviously I'm really lucky, but I know a lot of schools aren't. So it's not necessarily about the perfect picture. It's about the picture that can most easily be transferred to lots of schools. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because I'm a year 9 tutor, and last year we don't do it so much this year because they're all a bit bigger and trying to fit them all in the hall. But in 7 and 8, and also we kind of want them to study more in year 9 and kind of get ready for assessments. But in 7 and 8, we had it that they would all do on every other Friday there would be a sport, and it was into forms, and it rotated through terms. It was bench ball or dodgeball, so it's all kind of different kind of sports, and each tutor group would put a team up, and it'd be 5 girls, 5 boys, and it had to be different kids each week, and everyone else, and they were super into form, competitive. There was prizes, and like everyone, it's that kind of whole, having them all in the hall, especially after COVID. They haven't really had that for a while, and kind of cheering each other on. And And they've it's the one thing they've really missed. They're like, this year, they're like, I really want it. Why aren't we doing that anymore? Why don't we get to do that? And it's kind of a bit of a shame, because all that, it was kind of took the pressure off necessarily it being about fitness, and it was more of a real like kind of joint shooter effort and enjoying it as like a little bit of fun. And I think it changed their mentality. They obviously, I'm super, super competitive and I like to win. And the kids tell me I get a bit carried away. I'm at the edge kind of getting the balls and throwing them in to give them an extra hand. But it's kind of nice to see that side that like everyone was kind of involved, and no matter kind of what ability. And it was just kind of that fun aspect of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially within my remit, actually, with our younger years, because we implement athletic development from year 7 all the way through to upper 6. At our bottom end, if we think about like a sliding scale between fun and fitness, like the majority of the stuff we do is fun. Like, so for example, one of our lesson plans might be around squatting basics, but we won't do any actual like loaded body weight squatting. A lot of it will be like single leg stuff. It'll be like squat challenges. So like we use merits as like an awarding system. So we'll award merits to students based upon kind of their movement assessment, but we don't make it so formative that students feel really disheartened if they can't do certain movements. And that's where kind of that education comes in. Like, it's important to explain to kids, especially around that year 8 to 10 phase where puberty starts to take effect and coordination can be sort of thrown out of whack, that actually they understand that they're going to be good at certain skills at different times. And then for some of them, then they're going to be playing catch up at certain points. And that's where, that's where I think my job has value, is because it's not just, oh, let's go into the gym and let's just be 20 kids because we can't put them anywhere else. That the whole premise of bringing athletic development within schools is actually to educate them and expose them. So we reduce injury risk as a big one. We increase participation and lifelong participation, and then also create that big fun factor. Because, like you said at the start, when you had that major as your instructor, he used to just make you all want to vomit. And I think a big thing is we don't want to negatively associate fitness with health, because then we have kids that the first thing they do when they walk in the gym is groan because they think they're going to get they're going to be made to feel really rough, when actually the whole goal should be around education and then exposing them to the movement so they can practice those movements in a safe place. And it's a big thing I tell the kids is like, we want school to be like a safe stressor. We want you to make mistakes now in everything from English, math, science, to the way you behave, to what you do in the gym, because ultimately when you leave school, you'll then have had that experience that you don't make those same mistakes kind of twice.
I think it's that thing. It's creating a safe space for them to fail as well, and
Absolutely.
having somewhere that like it's okay to be rubbish. You only get better through consistency, and I think a lot of kids don't necessarily have the resilience. I saw somebody chatting on Twitter about what do this generation of kids not have, the what are they missing, and a lot of people wrote resilience. Like, they don't have that kind of like, I will keep going, I will get myself up again. But I think it's also kind of building that consistency. If they don't have that consistency, they're not going to show the results. And I think that's the difficult thing with sport, is it's not instant, oh, you're going to suddenly be better than that. It is something that has to build over time, and they don't get those quick results. So it is more difficult to kind of get them to keep that engagement with it.
But the two things also go hand in hand, right? Like, we talk about resilience, and you just spoke about how you don't get quick results within exercise. Well, then shouldn't they be doing more of it to enhance their ability to deal with resilience? So like, this is what's great about the gym environment, especially, is you don't need a lot of equipment, but you can easily make a regression and progression exercise library. So if someone can't do a bodyweight squat, you might do like a box squat. If someone can do a bodyweight squat, we might then move them on to like a goblet squat. So like, it's really easy to show kids how they are progressing through movements in the gym and on the field. Again, if you have also the equipment with it though. So like, there are some more extreme examples where I've seen schools have like an athletic development report card. So they use like a movement standard where kids will be taken through, say, 7 tasks, and they'll be graded based upon their tasks and how well they perform them. We don't do it yet at our place just because we haven't got the resources to do it. But if you have a big enough team, you can essentially dictate, you can basically work out where kids are, when kids are growing. So you can make really good kind of assumptions based on their movement and coordination skills. But then you can also give them really, really clear objectives on how to improve their fitness. Like anything, if you create objectives and you can create some sort of tiers, you can give kids direction. Especially at our place, a lot of our kids are very gifted in kind of like maths and science. So I do my best to make our challenges quite numerical, because then they feel like it kind of makes more sense from an academic point of view for them as well. But particularly within athletic development, we very much are trying to come away from that model of you're just in here to do 30 minutes of exercise. Like it needs to be more than that if we want them to go on to do this as a lifestyle habit as they go through kind of their life.
Can you see it as like a coach, kind of what area that a child is kind of strong in, that you're like, oh, that kid's got like real good, I don't know, jump, they'll be really good at basketball? Can you see that quite early on? And do they tend to kind of, with guidance, kind of go down that route, or do some of them be like, oh no, I'm not interested in that, or is it that they kind of will go, oh okay, if I'm going to be better at that, I will give that a go?
So we do like a screen every half term ish. Or every term we do like a movement screen. So we'll do one assessment that is primarily based on how well they move, which is an overhead squat. Which, for those that don't know, that is you essentially have a stick overhead and you have to do like a full squat and you get graded. They do a speed test, a jump test, a broad jump test, and an agility test. At the moment, it's kind of in the infancy of how we're using that data, but essentially we hope to kind of help kids with the directions they want to travel. But ultimately, it's not kids that have certain physical characteristics will naturally gravitate towards that sport, right? So if you're tall, what sport are you going to play?
Yeah, so like basketball or what have you.
Yeah, you go towards basketball. If you're strong and big and a little bigger, you're going to go to rugby. Like if you're naturally quite good at football, or you've been in football from a younger age, you're probably going to drift towards football. But that's also where those opportunities come from. So that's why we kind of try to expose the kids to as many sports as possible, so that they get that full movement toolbox. They learn about how to use other skills that aren't just directed towards one sport. And as such, again, if they decide to change sport or if they phase out of a certain sport, they have these other options. So it comes back primarily again to opportunity. Like we will say to some kids, if they're like unbelievably fast or if they can jump very high, we might say to them, you should pursue athletics or you should pursue sprinting or basketball. But I think, especially at our place at the moment, we're kind of in the infancy of being able to say what data will directly drive you to what sport.
Does that kind of a child's physique kind of drive into what bits? So my nephew, bless him, I hope he'll never listen to this, but he'll hate me for saying it. He's 5'11". He's really annoyed that he's not 6 foot. But he was indoor rowing champion 2 years in a row for his age, but he couldn't quite get it. They ended up not taking him further. The British team were looking at him, but because he wasn't tall enough. And I just find that bizarre that he can win those competitions. So he won them by quite a margin, but yet he just wasn't tall enough for it. Ironically, now he's gone into rugby and he's very focused on that. And it's amazing to see him when I visiting when he was 15, coming home from school, like literally going straight down the gym, working out, and then going to training and stuff. So he does stuff with the extra rugby team, and I think that it's the idea that he's got that discipline from quite a young age, and that's sometimes quite difficult to get in teams. And so I think like there is that uniqueness of sport that you can create like a lot more of a kind of dedicated routine that you wouldn't necessarily get from other sports. Subjects.
Yeah, I think all sport has kind of underpinnings of, well, you have to practice to be better. You have to be resilient to take feedback and be able to then progress with that feedback. So like if you've grown up in activity, especially like the big cardiovascular ones like rowing and rugby and endurance, you're used to putting in a lot of work. Like if you think about sports that require a lot of training hours, you think of gymnastics, you think of rowing. So I think especially those sports, it very much creates that ethos that you will have that resilience to then try other sports. That's why, again, coming back to it, I think it's really important that kids are able to play as many sports as possible as kids, because it's like anything, it's the same as GCSEs. Like kids are told to take part in GCSEs, or made to, should I say, because when they leave, it means the better their A level, the better their GCSEs, the better their A levels, the more opportunity they have to go into different fields of study. You know, if we very much told kids from an early age, you know, you should be doing this, then we're funneling and channeling them to an area they might not even enjoy in 5-10 years time. Which is why, like, I've been reading the book actually I recommended last week, which was Think Again. And one of the questions they tell you not to ask kids is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because ultimately then you're creating this kind of closed mindset to them. And if they fail at that one occupation, then we've basically ingrained in them that that's it. Like they've kind of lost their direction.
I think it's an interesting one, because I think sport itself helps with mental health massively. Like, I find it, if I'm stressed out, if I've been for a run or worked out, I feel mentally much better. But I was watching this week the Niall Wilson, the gymnast. He was doing a TED talk, and he was talking about how he was really successful. He'd got loads of business on the side. He had like millions of followers on TikTok, and his videos were going really well, and he was making loads of money and was going really well. And then he was like, oh, but hang on, I missed these out. And then he was like, but I was gambling, I was drinking excessively, I was cheating on my girlfriend. Like, I couldn't cope mentally when I lost the sport. So I think, is that something that we need to perhaps build into kind of the younger generations, that kind of resilience to the fact that it might not work out, or if it does work out, you've like, what happens afterwards? Like, is it important to keep them kind of considering other areas? Because I definitely think there's so many kids will always go, oh, I'm going to be a famous footballer. But it's like, but what if you actually get into the academies and get there? Like, how do we support them in that respect as well? That even if they get through the academies and they seem to be doing well, that if there is that failure, how do we support them in that respect with both areas? Because I think sport's one of those, it gives loads in terms of mental health, but also that aspect of failure with the mental health that comes with that.
Absolutely. It's a cracking question. Like, and we're talking very much here about competition versus health, or versus participation. Like, we want kids to pursue avenues. We want kids to do their best, and we want them to channel that enthusiasm. But ultimately, we also need to maybe remind them of how hard things are. Like, I've worked in kind of football academies before, both from a teaching point of view in terms of BTEC delivery and also some athletic development. And a lot of the scholars within that junior academy system are made very aware of what the likelihood is of them becoming a pro player. And now, as part of their education, they have to be enrolled within certain educational requirements. So they have to be doing either like an apprenticeship or further formal qualifications. But yeah, I think it comes down to, and I think you might also feel this, and I think it's something I share as well, is you can do sport for competition. So like, if you're, say, a weekend warrior, or, you know, if you're really into, like, say, for instance, CrossFit, and you're competing in CrossFit, but then also you should do activity for your own health as well. So having activities that benefit your mental health and your physical health, that might not necessarily be all about competition, but actually they're more geared towards just completing a consistent amount of sessions, for example. So then you're always reinforcing that foundation of physical health too. So like, a really good example of that would be, like, if you're someone that enjoys, say, for example, like CrossFit, which CrossFit again is a really good example. CrossFit as a base for most people is about their health. It's about training 5 days a week or 4 days a week and looking after themselves and being part of a much bigger community, which really touches on that mental health side of things. But then you might also be the same person who then does, say, 3 CrossFit competitions a week, or plays a competitive sport on the side. So, for example, for me, basketball is my competitive release. That's where, like, my mindset is geared towards winning and geared towards making the most of me and my teammates. But whereas when I go to the gym is very much about, yes, I still have those markers and those kind of areas that I want to improve, but it's much more about being within a community of people that share that drive to being healthy. And as such, like, I feed off that. I really enjoy that social side of exercise.
I don't know whether students necessarily see that as well. I think, I don't know about you, but whether you feel that there's enough kind of exposure for students for looking at the different types of fitness. Like if I don't necessarily know whether my students would watch much CrossFit, but if you look at the kind of men and women competing on them, and also the older age range, I love the fact that there's kind of much older, fitter people, and that it's kind of getting them to see that fitness is more than just it's a lifelong thing. It's going to keep you healthier, it's going to keep you like from getting injured, and it's going to help you in longevity and being able to like play with your kids and be healthier and be able to do more. You'll have more energy in your day-to-day life if you're kind of exercising. But I do feel like it's very much like, I think it's a social media thing, perhaps, that they're kind of like it's skinny versus strong. I did see that there was that on a reel actually on Instagram, that it's like I want people to think that I don't work out because I'm to be skinny. I work out to be strong. I want people to think that I carry my shopping in one go. Kind of that mentality that, do we need to take the pressure off, specifically probably more girls, but I know there are boys with body conscious issues that they feel like they have to have abs and look a certain way, that actually we need to turn the mindset, and that it's not about looking a certain way, it's about being healthy and being strong. And the stronger you are, the more you'll achieve, almost the easier you'll go through life. If you're stronger, it's going to take less energy to do your daily things.
Yeah, there's quite a few points in there, and I'll try and hit all of them. But I think if we look at it first of all from that mental health side of things, actually the research points to boys having more occurrences or more symptoms of body dysmorphia compared to girls. It's just hidden better within boys, because boys, you know, when a boy looks in the mirror and flexes, no one thinks two things about it, because it's just, oh, he's a boy, he's training, there's ego there. But actually that's a very common sign of body dysmorphia, is this drive. And also, like, again, getting a bit broad here, what do we call an addiction and what do we call a hobby? Like, where is the line?
Good point.
Because
yeah.
As a rower, you might have been rowing 6 days a week, and you might not be on a world circuit or a pro team, but you row 6 days a week because you enjoy rowing 6 days a week. But to someone who doesn't do sport, that is an addiction. Like, that is, you're doing this because you're trying to avoid something. But also we have to understand the power of exercise. Like, we know that people that have like high levels of anxiety, if they exercise, their anxiety, because of how hormones work, naturally reduce, and they feel better about themselves. So we know that we can use exercise as almost a form of medicine, to help people with anxiety. But if we think about exam time, what is the first lesson that always gets cancelled for exams?
PE, yeah.
PE, and then and you'll share that frustration, because I bet art is also something that gets overlooked for bigger exams as well. So like, if we think about, actually, if we're trying to teach these kids that looking after themselves, especially when things are most stressful, which is around exam time, then why are we not encouraging kids to be doing sport and exercise between exams, rather than telling them to sit down and revise for even longer, and to put themselves under more stress, and to confine themselves to a room where they're probably not talking to anyone? Like, we're sending the wrong message if we're trying to encourage this whole idea of health. And again, if we look back, I can't remember the paper's name, I'll try and find it, but actually kids who did more exercise during an exam period generally did better in their exams.
I think I'd love to know the theory of that.
I'll try and find the paper.
Especially because quite often they have one in the morning and one in the afternoon. If you made those kids do, even if you did what primary schools did and made them do a walk a mile and have like a bit of fresh air, a bit of exercise, actually mentally, are they going to be able to go into their afternoon exam way stronger than they're going to sit in a room and revise for an hour? I imagine that they would. I know I certainly would. It's certainly something that we need to look at, especially I think that it'll be interesting to see how students cope with exams this year, with the fact that they've not been kind of the same for the last couple of years, and whether we as teachers need to be responsible and kind of give them more coping mechanisms in terms of how they deal with that stress and what their outlets are and the importance of it. Because I think even just going for a walk and getting outside and can have like a massive effect on your mood. And I don't think it's quite kids are kind of necessarily buying into that, but I think it's one of those that if they see it and do it, maybe they will.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back to the opportunity you can create within your school setting. Again, we're really lucky. So like, our year 10s and 11s have everything from like your generic games, because we have games in PE. Our games are very much the core sport, but then our PE is like as as um as kind of broad and fun and different as possible. So they'll do like global games. They'll take part in like disability games. So they'll get to understand what it's like if you have a particular sort of impairment. They'll get to understand about like exercise for wellness. So like we do things like long walks where they can take their headphones off and we get them to feedback how it made them feel in comparison to a certain other type of exercise. So and because again we're lucky, we can our PE framework can be a lot more different to that of one that's very much structured based on governing bodies. We can get away with doing a very broad PE framework and making it as open as possible. You know, like we have a big push at the moment on getting more girls in the gym because we want to encourage that cultural trend. And again, coming back to like why kids are doing sport. Well, we know that boys tend to gravitate towards role models that are athletes in sport, but we also know that girls don't have that kind of. It's getting better over the years, but we know that their role models don't always tend to be sports people. They kind of are more likely to be within their social groups and be dictated based on their social groups. So if we can encourage role models, like I think CrossFit has done a great job in showing that as a female you can be whatever you want. You can be strong or powerful. You don't have to be a certain size dress. You don't have to be a certain frame. You can be whoever you want to be, and exercise should be a massive driver of that. And that's kind of what we're trying to do as much as possible, is create avenues for lots of opportunity. So it's not just a one size fits all approach, because we know that most people don't enjoy that conventional exercise or if you think about sport, actually sport normally for most technical sports, you're not bad at sport because you're physically unfit. You're bad at sport because you're technically not good enough, or you just don't enjoy it. So actually if all you can offer at school is core sports, then you're probably losing, like, I don't know, say as an anecdotal number, maybe 40% of the kids, because they're just like, I'm not very good at football. So when you spend 6 weeks playing football, they kind of just get lost in the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I was going to jump on one of the things you said there about girls. Do you think it is harder to get girls to invest in kind of sport in general and the kind of longevity? I know that you coach quite a lot of girls' teams. Is it a case that kind of once they're actually in the team, they kind of get the benefits from it? But it's like, how do you get them to kind of give it a go? But is it also one of those things that once girls are in a team, it's very difficult for an outsider to kind of join it? Because girls are quite intimidating when they're in a big bunch.
Yeah, a couple of things there. From a sport point of view, I look after a local county netball team. So from a sport point of view, in a competitive environment, if you have, I suppose that mindset, you encourage girls who are good at sport and have that mindset. So I think that's probably a bit of a bias for you, because they are good at netball and because they are in a county setting. I guess you naturally have those that have a bit more resilience, who are more dedicated to sport. So actually, I might not use those as an example. Sorry, that's a bit of a bad example, because they're there because they're good at sport and they probably already got that mindset. Within a school setting, it's getting them in the door. Actually, yeah, I very much agree with that. If you get them in, generally it then becomes about how much they think you care. So like, if you're asking lots of questions and you're really invested in terms of like, what they want to do, generally they stay. And like our girls only gym sessions came in this year, and like we regularly get between kind of 6 and 10, which for a single session is really good in terms of what we're trying to encourage. And those girls range from kind of years 9 through to sort of lower 6. And actually the trends we've seen, not just within girls but boys as well, is that we're now getting more and more younger kids wanting to come into the gym during their extracurricular time as well. So I think on the female point of view, it's a tricky one. I'm kind of lucky because in the gym setting, because it's their time, it's very much guided by them wanting to come in. So I try to make it as open as possible, so there's not that pressure to first get them in the door. Then once I know they've kind of committed their own time and they train and they've committed, say, twice a week for half a term, then I might give them a bit more direction. And a good example of that is we have an upper sixth who just decided in year 11 she liked Olympic weightlifting. So she's basically been doing that 4 days a week for 3 years now, to the point where I write her some small programs and she just does them, and she really enjoys coming in, and she finds a lot of kind of she really enjoys those programs. So yeah, I think it very much is getting them in the door, whether that's in introducing kind of certain requirements that are open enough that you're not excluding anyone, but closed enough that they feel comfortable, but not putting so much pressure on them that you expect them to complete, say, a full session within a 60-minute window.
Is it that we need to think about kind of also the age ranges? Are different ages more open to trying new things than other year groups, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. Because we do athletic development, strength training with our PE curriculum, because that comes in from year 7. I think the trend supports the fact that now we are seeing more and more kids in general in the gym. So I think part of it is that like exposure, because they understand how to do certain things, they now want to come in more and train. On top of that, I think because it is a tricky one, but I think like with anything, if you expose them early enough, it then just becomes making it a bit of a habit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose as well, it's also having the guidance that they don't push themselves too far before their body's ready. I know I'm picking on my nephew here that's like 5'11", but I know that his coach actually said to him, stop lifting such heavy weights because that's going to be affecting your height because you're still growing. Like you don't need to be going that high, just concentrate on the reps, because he was just so desperate to get as strong as possible. So I think it's also like kind of reminding them to not get too carried away, but also think about kind of the longevity and making sure it's right for them and their size and their age and their development at the time.
Yeah. So like, so especially within, if we think about like when things like social groups, cultural groups, like trends become a thing, like when would you say that as a female you kind of invested in, say, like makeup or kind of went down those avenues as a female?
Oh, I don't think I was probably like, year 8 maybe.
And like if we think about what shares time, and the earlier we can get these kids in before they go through these social trends of thinking that actually they shouldn't be going to the gym or they shouldn't be exercising or they're getting sweaty isn't like attractive. If we can get them in early enough and make them understand that this is important for your health, then ultimately we can start to break some of those barriers down, which then won't form later in life. In terms of like loading for kids, it's actually more preferential for kids to weight train from a younger age than it is an older age, right? So if we can get kids in, and we talk about something called PHV, which is peak height velocity, which is basically the period of time where kids grow at their fastest. If we can get kids in before they go through their first phase, PHV, the strength that they will gain will be of much more of an advantage than if they were to train after they finish growing. The only sort of challenge to that is having someone who is skilled enough to understand when kids are pushing too hard and when they need to almost dial it back as well. You can, if you want to get real sort of sciencey about it, you can actually measure the stage in which someone is in their growing rate based on the height of their parents and sitting them on a box and measuring certain limb lengths. And from that, you can create a percentage of PHV, which then tells you what percentage roughly they are at in terms of their growth rate. So they might be their 87% growth rate. And there's got like color coded kind of systems to when they should be pushing and when they should be dropping off. But you can also just visually look at them. Like if you've seen a child has had a growth spurt, chances are they're going to be, if you watch them play a sport, they're going to look a little bit like a giraffe. They're going to be a little bit uncoordinated. They're going to be a bit gangly because their body has to relearn this proprioception, has to relearn how to control all the limbs in synchronicity. So yeah, a big part of it is definitely social and cultural groups. A big part of it is actually, this is where I kind of challenge your thought process on loading, is with the boys, it's very much about, hey, you haven't got to load it so much, think about your technique. But with the girls, for me, it's very much about pushing them to understand what heavy feels like. So one of our strength training sessions for our year 10s and 11s is basically they work up to either a 1 rep max or a 3 rep max deadlift. And I mean to the point where they are failing, like they can't lift the bar off the floor, because if we don't challenge, if the kids can't understand what a truly, truly, truly stressful rep should feel like, then actually they're not going to be getting the training effect we're after. So we use something called RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, right? So 10 out of 10 is the hardest thing you've ever done. 0 out of 10 is the easiest thing you've ever done. But kids don't know what a 10 out of 10 is. 10 out of 10 is because they've probably not been in a stressful situation in their life, like a truly stressful situation, unless you are a rower, unless you are a gymnast, where you're doing, say, 6 days a week and you're with a coach outside of school who is pushing you to the point of exhaustion. And that's where understanding where exhaustion is. But unfortunately, a lot of coaches train too close to exhaustion too often, and then you get that negative training effect that kids just lose that willingness to want to be there.
I think that's quite interesting because it is that, and especially when hormones come into it, they're more likely to go, oh well, I just can't be bothered anymore, I'm just not going to do it. And it is that it has to be a positive relationship where they want to enter the room, they want to turn up. It has to be a positive experience, otherwise it is going to turn them off from it.
Absolutely. And I was really against the idea of having a boys and girls only session. Sorry, we haven't got a boys only session, only a girls only session, because ultimately my goal should be that everyone can train together. There is no like prejudice. There is no, oh, she's a girl, or oh, there's boys in here and they smell and they're always screaming or they're slapping weights around. It should be that everyone trains under the same roof, and there's this like collective agreement in mind that everyone is in there to improve on themselves. But I guess when I first came in to education and athletic development, I thought that obviously kids' mindsets weren't quite like that. And it took me a year or so to realise that actually the girls weren't coming in because the boys are loud, because the boys chat a lot, because when there are girls in the room, the boys tend to mess around a little bit more. So actually by separating those groups, and the girls can train whenever they want, the girls can go into all the boys' sessions they want, but ultimately the girls needed their own session as well for them to be a bit more focused and for them to feel like they can train with confidence.
Sorry, I was going to say, what about in terms of teachers? Now, I know that our kids are a bit like, they love it when a teacher gets involved. If we're a man down on the team, I'll end up going into our dodgeball. But also the fact that we have like a park run on a Monday night, and I know a lot of teachers do it as well. I've obviously broken 2 feet in 6 months, so not been participating, needless to say. But I think even when I did do it before that, they kind of liked the idea that they could very much beat me. But also I think it gave kind of the confidence of some of the other kids that aren't so sporty, that were like, oh, okay, well, if Miss is doing it, doesn't matter, we're like at the back having a chat with her. Or whether they're kind of trying to keep up with the geography teacher that's doing laps on me. So I think it's kind of that kind of idea of lead by example, that we're kind of all doing it together, kind of really grew. And I know quite a lot of schools are kind of getting into that, kind of adding in kind of park runs. I know there's a couple of schools near me that do it even on a weekend as well. They have it at their school, so we get quite a lot of kids attend. I know when I've gone to my park run near me, there are several kids turning up to that, and I just make sure I'm behind them when I start so they don't lap me. But then it is kind of interesting seeing their times, and they get excited when I'm like, oh, I saw you at park run, your time was good. It's that kind of almost positive reinforcement that it's something that you can do beyond school and that anybody can do it. It's even the art teacher that's normally in heels will get out of trainers and kind of give it a go. And it doesn't matter where you come at the end, it's for the benefit of it.
Yeah, that's another really, really, really good kind of point to make, is especially for me, because I'm not strictly a teacher, I'm not employed as a teacher, like I'm employed as support staff. It means my relationship with the kids is a bit different, so I guess they're more open to the understanding that they can have different conversations with me a little bit, which is quite nice, because again, just touching on the mental health side of things, there might be a conversation from a student who doesn't feel they can talk to a teacher about it, but they can talk to a member of staff about it. So it's very much, that's that first kind of portal open. But yeah, you made a really, really good point there, actually. Like within the coaching framework, a big part of it is showing what you're doing. Like if you said to a student, if you explained to them a back squat and you just said to them the key points of a back squat, so like hips back, sit into your heels, push your knees apart, keep your chest up, and you didn't actually show them what they were doing, first of all, they'd probably get it wrong. And second of all, you're going to lose interest really, really quickly. The great thing about PE, the great thing about athletic development in schools is essentially you're just joining in. You're just rolling around on the floor. making it as fun and as open and as like, you can make it as non-scriptive as you want. You can make it as non-formative as you want. You can make it essentially just another. You can make it. We have parkour in our PE program, like, and that's what's great about your example is if kids see you doing it, they will replicate you because you're still a role model, whether they like you as a teacher or not. If you take part and you're practicing, then ultimately they realize this is something that they're not just telling us to do, but they're actually doing it themselves. So I make a habit of trying. I'm not in every single one of our games lessons, but I make a habit of training during one of the games lessons so they actually see that, oh, you know, Sarah isn't just telling us how to do this stuff. He actually can do it. And I guess they see that and go, oh, that's something to either look up to. That's something to challenge and try and beat. Ultimately, I'm not doing my job correctly unless some of these kids, when they leave school, are actually stronger than me. That's kind of the point we're trying to make. Okay, it's not all about strength, but if we can guide them and challenge them to be better than the people that are teaching them, then ultimately they're going to realize that teachers don't have as big egos as they think, and second of all, you're creating this really, really positive environment where your relations between students and staff is much stronger and fluid because they see you practicing the things that you're preaching about at the same time. And that parkrun idea is great because I bet there's lots of good conversations. And ultimately, if you think about it from a safeguarding and a mental health side of things, you might actually have a student come to you and say, yeah, I use that parkrun as something to help clear my head. Or they might start a conversation with a student who wouldn't normally open up to another member of staff because they see you doing some of the same stuff. And also, it also challenges that status quo, right? Like, why should the art teacher not be really fit? Why should the geography teacher not be really fit? Why should the music teacher not strength train? Like, PE, yes, is its own separate entity, and it very much is delivered like that. But you don't. It's not like you can only be good at maths and not be good at PE. Like, you can be good at lots of GCSE. So why can't you be good at like your health as well? You know.
It's good to break down the stigma. I'm gonna play the news, but then I would like you to tell me your best sporting role model and your best coach role model. But you'll have a little minute to think about it. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's perfect.
A leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit joncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This episode of Teachers Talk Radio has been made possible with support from Witherslack Group, the UK's leading provider of SEN education and care. They're here to support you too through an ever-growing offer of free resources, including webinars, podcasts, articles, and events aimed at supporting teaching professionals like you. Visit their website at www.witherslackgroup.co.uk to find out more. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The long debate as to whether a Yorkshire pudding belongs on a Christmas dinner has often been a talking point on social media. This year, however, the debate has reached new heights after an 11-year-old schoolgirl was left unimpressed by the failure to include her favourite item on the school Christmas lunch. The Daily Mirror carries details after the pupil's letter to her head teacher was shared on social media. The 11-year-old pupil from a Lancashire primary school sent the strongly worded email after she noticed that none of the pupils were served Yorkshire puddings, but staff were. The email referred to the puddings as food of the gods and as golden delicacies, and described the actions of the school as cruel and callous. Puddings for all were demanded going forward. The head teacher took the complaint seriously, but in good humour, and even agreed to take part in a conciliatory dance-off to make up for it. The dance-off was conducted in front of the whole school, with only one clear winner, the 11-year-old. So for all those still debating whether Yorkshire puddings belong on a Christmas dinner, be prepared to hit the dance floor to settle the argument. Chester Zoo and the University of Chester have joined forces for a new course focusing on conservation and sustainability education. This course offers the first opportunity anywhere in the world for education professionals to gain a recognised qualification. The course will launch in 2023 and allow those studying to gain a postgraduate certificate. The course aims to provide educators with knowledge and skills needed to help learners maximise the impact they can have in carving a better future for the planet. Full details of the new course can be found on the University of Chester website. Whilst recruitment and retention of teachers and other professionals in the UK has been a frequent topic of discussion, Nigerian news outlet The Nation looks at the topic from another angle. The article focuses on what it describes as a mass exodus of licensed medical doctors and other health professionals to more developed countries, and now the fear is changes to UK immigration rules will have a further impact on the education sector. According to a recent announcement, from February the 1st, 2023, teachers from Nigeria and other countries who qualify will be able to apply to be teachers in the UK. Whilst this is a step in the right direction for recruitment in the UK, there are fears in Nigeria and other nations that this will lead to a further brain drain that can only have a negative impact on the youth of these other nations. Finally, with many schools already broken up for the Christmas break, it's left only to wish all school staff an enjoyable holiday, while sending solidarity to those who, according to a recent Teacher Tap survey, are pushing on into this week, particularly to the 7% of staff who don't break up until Friday, the 23rd of December. Keep going. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the 50th episode of 2 Minute Tech. This week, I want to make an appeal.
So, we're sponsored by John Catt, and they've got some great books on resilience, and kind of there's a great guide to outdoor learning, or kind of playing with fire, embracing risk and danger in schools. I think this kind of builds on kind of what we've said, and kind of changing kind of the way we look at kind of sport, and making sure we're encouraging the kids to kind of create risk, but have a safe space that they can kind of make those mistakes and think about what they're doing in that respect. Josh, have you come up with your best coach and your best sporting hero to look up to for students?
I have. So mine is very much deep within my own sport that I play. So I play basketball. So my sporting role model will be, no surprise, it'll be Michael Jordan. And in particular, if you know anything about his story, he was actually cut from his high school team. So Michael Jordan is probably world renowned as the best ever basketball player to play the game. But he was actually cut from his high school team at a very young age. And he's someone that, if you follow a lot of his kind of quotes, he's very much based around like practicing and putting in the work and having the resilience to want to better yourself and to be a better player. And the documentary, which I think is still on Netflix, is another really good example of how he kind of approaches his training and to how he developed his game over years and years and years to be better. In terms of my coaching role model, it's actually someone that has been my coach, not necessarily a professional coach. So a teacher still at Notre Dame High School called John Hodds. He was my basketball coach. Very firm, but if you put in effort and work continuously, you had his respect. And that was a big thing for me, and a big thing that I carried forward was when people, you have to reward people for the hard work they put in around you. So if people are giving up their time to benefit themselves in your company, whether you're a coach or say even a player in the same team, then I think there's almost a sense of ownership and a sense of not reliability, but kind of that the liability to also bring kind of your A game and to not let everyone else down, which I think is kind of a really big kind of dynamic within team sports. So those would be my role model and my coaching role model.
Do you think that's a really important aspect, that students kind of almost need to respect you as a coach, but also I suppose respect like the rules and what's trying to be kind of created and embedded. And if they lack that kind of respect, they're not necessarily going to get the most out of that environment.
Absolutely. It's almost the hardest thing to ascertain, because even, let's say, your A team sport, your A team, it might not be the best in the county, but that doesn't stop you creating a culture that would develop those players. And I think, like I said, if you know you're on a team with other people that you can't let down, for most people that makes them rise to the occasion, it makes them want to play better, and it makes them take some ownership. And again, if there's one thing that I can kind of get people to take away from this pod, is actually there's so many more skills outside of just being fit and healthy that you develop by doing sport, by being part of a team culture, or even just an individual culture. Like, if you create targets and you're regularly trying to hit those targets, you're training yourself to be reliable. You're training yourself to be resilient too.
I think that's a lot of I think kind of the bit behind this, isn't it, that we've kind of pulled out throughout, is trying to give the kids those resilience. And I do think I think COVID, especially with lockdown, kids went one of two ways. There's the kids that went out for the run or the walk, or there's those kids that stayed at home and played video games. I know I'm stereotyping slightly, but I think the ones that kind of engaged with the activity and got themselves outside, did their daily walk, kind of build up that resilience. And that we have kind of almost got these kind of students now that have had all this chaos from these last couple of years that are lacking that. And I think PE and sport is one of the areas that we can rebuild it, but it's perhaps taking slightly longer than it would have previously, because they would have a certain amount kind of built in, but they have kind of lost it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're ultimately trying to develop their spectrum of emotions and their spectrum of how to deal with things, right? So, like, as a coach, we have to be compassionate and consistent. We have to be flexible and accountable. We have to be sympathetic and rigid. We want them to pursue perfection, but on the way, we want them to attain excellence. Like, we have an expectation of what they should be doing, but we know that's going to fluctuate. We ultimately have a structured framework to what we need to deliver, but we also know that every child matters, and as such, we have to vary that framework to meet the needs of every child. We have to be critical on kids, but we should also be relaxed for some things as well. And I think that's what makes a really good teacher or a coach. I kind of use those words intertwined. I think teaching and coaching is very similar. I think coaching is just a little bit more about exposing kids to the environment, whereas teaching is a little bit more about the education behind the environment. But I think if you as a coach or a teacher can be critical with a student and give them really honest feedback, you're going to help build them a bit more. I don't always think the soft approach works in terms of, like, sort of mollycoddling the particular point you need to work on, and only you as the teacher with that student will understand. Getting to know your kids is really important, because you will then find out, like, the kids who you can push harder versus the kids that you can't. And I think there's sometimes this assumption that if you're in, say, like a C or a B team, like, the feedback you get might be softer than if you're in the A team. Whereas I think ultimately that's an area where kids kind of should be treated a bit more the same. Like, we should teach kids that this isn't an emotional response. We're not having a go at you because you've done something wrong. We're giving you some critical feedback so you can go away and work on it and then make a better decision.
I was going to ask, how important do you think is the competitive aspect of it, the kind of inter-school competitions? Is it important that we all kind of essentially do the same sports for that reason, that we can have that larger outreach of competitiveness, as opposed to, for example, my school has a girls basketball team, but they don't have a huge amount of schools to compete against because there aren't that many year 11 girls basketball teams. But is it a case that we need kind of more schools to be doing a bit more of everything, or do we need to keep that so that they do have that competitive side against other schools, or is just in school kind of competitive enough?
I think a mixture of both really does help. I think you need external schools to kind of give kids a bit of a fact check, a reality check, because obviously you're going to get a lot of kids that will think they're very good at their sport, especially East Anglia. Like, I remember when I played basketball at sixth form, we thought we were awesome. We went to play like an inner city London school, and we just got absolutely pumped. Like, so you need to have that external competition to reality check you every now and again, and to go, actually, we are not as good as we think. We now need to work on stuff. But coming into to my current school, especially watching the interform competitions and watching how many kids come and watch and how many kids take part and how balanced it is and how much fun they have. It's kind of, if you think about that spectrum again, we have like the far end competition, which is your national tournaments. And I think like interform competitions kind of sits between halfway and kind of three quarters of that as well. So it's a really nice time for all the kids, all the form tutors to get involved. Like we do staff versus student games as well. And like the kids love it. Like they get really on board. It's a really nice atmosphere. Like lots of people come to watch. I think inter-school stuff is really important for creating that culture. And for encouraging maybe some of those kids that do hide a little bit from the external sport to actually come forward and take part in some of that stuff.
Do you think that in kind of terms of schools, because I know in terms of from an art perspective, we're allowed to kind of adjust our curriculums and teach kind of what we have as our speciality. So whether it be printing or sculpting, it's kind of, we're allowed to kind of change the curriculum to it. Do you think there should be more kind of autonomy within sport, that you should have, like, there would be the set sports, but you should also have the option to be like, right, well, our teacher's really, really good at basketball or kind of handball or something, and kind of introduce them to something that they've got subject experts to it? Or are you not given perhaps the necessary kind of option to be able to showcase kind of your best skills, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Because we have a games and PE model, we attract specialist coaches who can then deliver in the games model. From a state school point of view, I think it happens. I just don't think it's recognised the same. Like, I think unless you're kind of lucky and you pick up a member of staff who just happens to really love a sport and as such creates that kind of culture, which normally does happen. It's normally where it comes from. You have a member of staff that comes in who's really good at, say, basketball, and all of a sudden you've got this real big push on basketball. Yeah, I just don't think it's recognised as much. I don't think it's kind of like this person has a particular specialism as, say, like an academic version. You know, like I think within sport, I think, and this is again where I think PE teachers get a lot of stick. PE teachers are not meant to be awesome at every sport. They're meant to know enough about every sport. And by being a very good generalist, they're not going to be a specialist. So their job is just to encourage you to try sports. It's not to make you do it all of your life. But that's where like pushing kids into other avenues, other sports, other clubs is really important. So to come back to your question, because I keep doing this caveat thing. Yes, I think it would be nice that sports coaches got a little bit more recognition if they were a specialist. But I think because of the private school, state school model, you naturally have specialist sports coaches because they don't need a teaching cert. They can go into a private school and deliver as a hockey coach. I know there's more companies now setting up that have like hockey, football, rugby specialisms, and they go into schools, into state schools, and deliver that as part of an initiative. I just don't think
we've had rugby in.
Yeah, I just don't think it's as big. I think it's just not as big at the moment. That's kind of where that lets you down a little bit.
Because I think that does it need to be that for a student to be successful, that they do need to kind of almost access outside of school kind of organisations? Like I know that we've got a very good swimmer at school. We have a swimming pool at school, but our students don't use it, which I find crazy. It just doesn't fit in with the timetables, and it tends to be the primary schools nearby that use it. So we've got this amazing kind of facility, and I know we've got amazing students. One of them's national champion, but the way I found that out is because she volunteers at the weekend on my son's swim class. So I think there's a lot of kids that perhaps do stuff out of school that go out under the radar. But to be successful, do you need to do it outside of school as well? So is it the case that actually kind of our pupil premium students, the students that don't have good family incomes that are going to be paying for these outside activities, that they're kind of at a disadvantage? And especially even more now with the cost of living crisis, that these kids outside of school are going to be kind of struggling to have those opportunities.
Yeah. First of all, first question. So yes, I think if you're good at a sport, you will need to be doing it more than, say, once a week. So like depending on obviously how much PE games your school delivers, I think for the large part you will need to be going outside of school. We are lucky enough that we have this big extracurricular program. So I know a lot of our kids that are good at, say, hockey will have multiple hockey sessions within a week, but they will still go and play at, say, Cambridge Hockey Club in the evening twice a week or 3 times a week. So because of those links, they're naturally playing more anyway. More doesn't always mean better, but it gives you more chance to perfect certain skills and to be exposed to different coaches. Yeah, I think you would too. I think if you are a very good sports player, you will have to look outside of probably the school setting to be able to have that opportunity, unless you're lucky enough that you're at a school where if you're a sports scholar, you can, say, miss a certain lesson every week. Say, for example, like if you were doing a music lesson on a rotation, but then, for example, using your swimming as an example, if they weren't swimming at the school, well, to get them down to local swim club's going to be, if we're being very realistic, 10 to 20 minutes. That gives you, say, if it's a single lesson, maybe 30-minute swim, then you've got to get back again for your next lesson. So in terms of logistics, it's another big area to look into. And then, the financial barrier of say, sports club memberships. And if you think about sports clubs that are especially practicing indoor, electricity bill is probably going to go up. They're probably going to have to front that, which means that your membership's going to go up. So I'm not completely clued up on Sport England initiatives, but I would assume, based on the cost of living crisis, there will be more initiatives coming out in terms of supporting kids into clubs. And I know a lot more clubs nowadays are setting up hardship funds. So like we are a county netball academy. We have to have a hardship fund. So we have to be able to offer at least 3 to 5 fully paid places for the year as a netball academy within a certain setup.
I think that hardship fund is quite an interesting one. I definitely think that's worth. I don't necessarily know whether other teachers know about that or perhaps or know which places around their school offer that, but it's certainly something that should be kind of promoted with things going on. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, Josh. That flew by. And I think our take from it is that we need to get these kids to be resilient and kind of fall in love with kind of sport and understand the benefits of it, and that it's a longevity to help them throughout life, and it isn't just for their kind of duration at school. Have you got anything to add?
No, just first of all, thank you very much for having me on, and it's been a pleasure to kind of get across my 2 cents to where PE and athletic development should be going within schools. I think, you don't need to be a specialist in terms of what you're delivering. You just need to be keen. And if you're near a university, especially, you should be reaching out to universities and talking to students, especially those in like fitness, strength and conditioning, sports science, because ultimately they're going to need work experience. And schools, I was really lucky that most of my work experience has been within schools, and I was lucky enough to fall into like a full-time position because of it. So if you're someone who's in the industry of strength and conditioning or sports science or even sports coaching, if you can get into a school, even on like an intern or a graduate kind of role, ultimately it's only going to benefit you in the future, because more and more of these jobs are going to pop up within schools, and you're going to have a really, really good effect on the later generations.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoyed listening and enjoy it on the replay.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.